Hello everybody, Jace from the Comic Source coming to you live once again from San Diego Comic-Con. Great to see my buddy Ramvi once again. Last year we were talking Detective, we were talking The Vigil. Huge news at the panel today. Sort of the king, as he's known, Jack Kirby.
King Kirby, yeah.
Fourth World, you're bringing them back.
Yeah.
How excited are you for this project?
I've been very excited for this for a long time. I originally broached the idea almost 3 years ago, so it's kind of had a bit of a time to sit there and marinate. And yeah, I feel like this is the right time. They've not been around for a while. I'm stepping off of Detective, which was a big sort of in the current consciousness kind of book. And I had a choice. What did I want to do after Detective? And I said, I want to take some toys that no one's been playing with for a while. And I feel like this is such a great thing because it's not just one toy, it's an entire universe that's just been kind of sitting there waiting for somebody else to come along and play with it. And so I'm very excited to have the opportunity to do that. Dare I say it, every comic book creator on some level comes in and says, oh man, I want to take on something where I get to build something nearly from scratch, but also sort of play with and pay homage to this huge thing that came before. So,
yeah, and I want to go back to the idea of being the perfect time, right? Not only is it a great time. You mentioned on the panel there's some things that happen in Absolute Power and All-In Special that explain why we're going back to New Genesis, we're going back to Apocalypse. But you also mentioned the word fatherhood and it being a personal story for you. But, you have a very young child who became a father for the first time. So almost if you'd pitched it 3 years ago and it had happened then, it might not be the book that it is.
100%,
now is the time.
100%, yes. I think the way this pitch went, I certainly had the bigger picture idea of what I wanted to do with it. But over the 3 years that it sat there, all the little details kind of fall into place. And I think the longer you spend with a story, eventually you end up finding what the story is really about. And for me, any kind of great mythology has always been about the relationships between gods. If you look at Greco-Roman mythology, it's all about fathers and sons and brothers and mothers, and some of them betraying each other, some of them loving each other. And so I think to bring that sort of emotive element in, it was certainly a sort of spark plug moment for me, going like, of course this is what it's about. It has to be about fatherhood. Scott Free is going to be a new father in the book, but also it's not just that one layer. It's Scott Free having to be a new father, but also realizing that, I didn't have a caring father when I grew up. It's also two brothers going like, you should have had my experience and I should have had your experience, and how does that play between them? And the idea of needing to do things to save yourself, put in the balance against the choices you have to make to save your children, save your families. I think those are all things that are going to play into this narrative. The other thing you mentioned about like the connection to All-In and Absolute Power, this is, I think, is the most connected to continuity book that I've done in my entire time at DC. It's going to tie into all of the stuff that's happening with the All-In and the Absolute universes. In some ways, when I was talking about this with people like Mark Waid and Scott Snyder, like Scott mentioned, like this is the great unification story. This is a thing that pulls all of the events happening across the DCU together. This is where they all come together at a single point.
But no pressure.
Oh no, I think that's great. I love it.
They're gods. They're very powerful, but we're talking about something you do just fantastically, which is character dynamic, character interaction. It was one of the best things about the Vigil, and learning the new characters along with that juxtaposition, right? Like we all have emotions. Like, we have relationships. Whether it's family or friends or what have you. So we can relate to the characters in that way, not necessarily the fantastical powers. So in a way, the intimacy of emotion, but then the epicness of just having these incredible powers. There's like a natural push-pull there. Is that something that is a challenge when you're crafting the story? Is it a joy to explore that?
I think it's the nature of these kinds of stories, right? Like the reason the grand mythologies of the world work are because they're still fundamentally stories about us. They're not about the gods, they're about us. And so in doing that, they're always about fatherhood, brotherhood, family, society, ambition, loyalty, betrayal, trust. All of these things are very human dramatics played out in these mythologies. The great beauty of working on a story like this is when you take those human dramatics and say, no, but these are gods. The consequences are world-changing and reality-altering. And I think the reason those stories last and they're really important to us is because we like to think of ourselves as beings capable of altering realities and changing the world around us. So they become inspirational, they become even aspirational in some ways, which is why mythologies are successful and which is why I think superheroes are successful here now in 2024.
I mean, these characters go way back. Created by Jack Kirby, we mentioned it before. And there was always dysfunction, right from the beginning. I think, like you said, pulling from those kind of mythical tales. Zeus and his children, nobody could ever get along, and it just made for such a fertile ground to tell stories. So, in preparation for this, did you go back and look at some of the things he did, and how do I pull in some of the foundational pieces, but make it accessible to new readers and modernize it? Like it's a little bit of an amalgamation in a way.
Yeah, I mean, look, I went back and read a lot of the Kirby stuff, and I think it's vast and sprawling, but I don't necessarily think it's particularly complex. I think once you start reading it, you recognize the tropes, you recognize where these characters come from. And so I wanted to keep that element of the sort of larger plot being relatively simple. So I think the story here is also going to be relatively simple, easy to follow. But what that means for me is that lets me focus entirely the drama on the interpersonal relationships. There's also things that are a little bit different from the Kirby stuff, which is I'm not just exploring the drama between these new gods. I'm also exploring the drama of what it's like when suddenly the new gods are on Earth, and the DCU has to deal with that, and who likes them and who dislikes them, and how do the heroes feel about having demigods in their midst. I think that also is drama, and there are characters there that will have important pieces and important roles to play. So yeah, I read a lot of the Kirby stuff. I'm taking a lot of pieces from there, but I think the correct approach for me is to take the ideas, is to take the bits that make me go, oh my God, that is so mind-blowing, and that really excite me, but then apply my understanding of characters, my sense of drama, my sense of plot to the story.
The other word that I think of when I think about the original stuff that Kirby did was it just had this sense of wonder. He was so great at drawing this kind of weird, new agey type of tech. Talk a little bit about your artist on the series that's going to be trying to follow in those footsteps.
Like if you've seen Evan's work at all, it makes complete sense to associate those words like wonder and scale and technology with the kind of work that Evan does. In fact, one of the first images in the book that I was talking to, like, I just want a double-page spread of New Genesis. I just want people to know what kind of place this is from one single image that they look at. And that's all he needs, because he's obviously read the Kirby stuff, but he brings his own aesthetic and his own design sensibilities to this. And I think that's important. Like, I think it would be a mistake to try and replicate Kirby, or to give people a sense of nostalgia and be like, look, we're doing this thing again that was done all those years ago. No, I think it has to feel like, yes, this is 2024. I am watching an evolution of Kirby here, and I think, Evan's just the perfect artist to do that kind of work. I've particularly been a fan of the way he's able to handle scale and also human drama, and put them both together on the page, and it doesn't feel strange or odd in any way. And I think you kind of need that, especially with the scale of the Kirby stuff. Like he would work on these double-page spreads that were insane, but then equally he would make you care about, Orion in the next panel, or his mother and father in the next panel. And I think that's important when you're dealing with these kind of mythological stories.
Yeah, I think especially on the scale we're talking about. I mean, he does the covers for your the run. I think a lot of people, Evan Cagle, they'll know his work from there.
Yeah.
But such a fantastic use of negative space, and when we're talking about an epic story, that kind of thing, doing those double page spreads, it's knowing what to put in, but also where to leave that space.
Breathing space for people. And also, I think that is the essence of being able to transmit scale, is you have to give people some reference as to what it's like to be ordinary in the same frame as you're doing something extraordinary. So I think he's very good at that.
One of the big themes that several creators have talked to me about, specifically Scott and Sky Snyder and Jason Aaron, about the absolute universe, and it's like there's this sense of wanting to be patient, building something new. We don't want to just introduce everything. We don't want to, I think the way Jason played, we don't want to use all our bullets at the beginning. So, it's about taking time and introducing characters and what have you. There are so many new gods, and it's not about shoving them all in the first issue or even the first 6 issues. It's about taking the time to make us care about these characters and building it out sort of organically. So you're going to focus on a few of the most prominent. Is that correct? And then
I think there have been new gods that have been present in recent memory because of books like Mr. Miracle or Danger Street, and I think the correct approach is to start there and make people understand, like almost like the first family of the new gods, if you will, which is obviously High Father, Mr. Miracle, Orion, Darkseid. There's going to be Orion's wife, Becca, Mr. Miracle's now wife, Barda. So that's the family I'm focusing around. There's also characters like Light Ray involved, because the initial part of the story is also kind of set, while it is set on New Genesis and it's also set a bit on Earth. And so having these characters spread out, but communicating with each other and having their consequences impinge on each other, I think that gives us time to not only establish these characters and learn to care about them again, but also to establish new expectations for these books. Because I think it would be a mistake to come into this book expecting you're going to get Kirby again. And so I think people are going to take some time to go like, what is this book? What is it about? How is it going to read? How is it going to feel? And I think once we've done that, as the plot sort of grows in size and as it becomes more interconnected with the rest of the events happening around the DCU, I think we'll see more new gods getting involved and bigger stakes and more characters getting pulled in. And some of them won't be new gods. Some of them will be DCU characters. Like Wonder Woman has an important role to play. I won't reveal who the villain is. But Jon Stewart has a role to play, and Superman has a role to play. So I think all of those characters coming in is going to be very exciting, because I don't think we've seen that even with the Kirby stuff. I don't think we've quite seen that meshing of the universe.
Talk about original. And again, the right time to do that, because it's going to make sense once we see kind 100%. Of the catalyst that pulls it back in.
Everything that happens in this book will have consequences beyond this book.
Well, last question as we're finishing up here, Ram. Was there a particular character whose voice you found really quickly, or is a favorite to write? Or is that like asking you to pick your favorite child?
Yeah, a little bit. Look, I mean, there are things I like about certain characters, and I think the best way to make a story your own is to have characters in circumstances that are testing of them, right? And so there's a dynamic I've wanted to tackle between Mr. Miracle and Orion. And so I found those voices when I knew what is it that they're going to be doing, what is their drama. In the same way, I've wanted to tackle sort of High Father's voice, but the obvious thing to do is High Father is this grand, wise, old leader. But then that's not the way to do it. The way to do it is to defy those expectations and turn them into something different. Also had a great time sort of figuring out what I want to do with Light Ray, because he's such a lovely, hopeful, joyous character. He's quite literally the god of joy. but then he's also a superhero, and he also has to go into battle. So figuring out what I wanted to do with him was great. And then I think probably my favorite part is going to be the dynamic between Varda and Scott-Free.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear you say that.
yeah, I think that's probably going to be my favorite part. Also, discussing this with Evan, just something from a design sensibility was that why are they all the same sizes? They're gods, and yes, we recognize there's been this thing that they're giants and they get shrunk down when they come here, but even within that, like, they should all be different body sizes, and we should use that as dramatic elements in storytelling. So,
wow, fantastic. Well, I couldn't be more excited for it, everybody. Coming in November, but hey, it's never too early to mention to your comic shop you're interested. It's the lifeblood, pre-ordering and what have you, and obviously when time gets closer, we'll be covering it on the DC Spotlights every week, everybody. So definitely thanks for joining us from San Diego Comic-Con, and Ram, I'm so excited and so
Pleasure.
happy for you. It's a dream project.
Absolutely. Something I've been very excited about. Very glad I'm getting to do it. I did not think this would be the thing I was going to be tackling post-Detective, but I'm like super excited to do it.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for the time.
Pleasure. Thank you for all your support.